when they were designing that, I don't even know what they were calling that first version of the Bac Kar. I mean, it was a 4-link, and that was the one that I was racing when I won Oktoberfest. And then the next version was going to go down to a 3-link, and because they wanted to get the seat back farther, I think. I don't know, but I just remember those guys, my dad and Jimbo, Les, and Bach, Gary Bach, and my dad had gotten a roll of paper out of the paper mill, like a 5-foot roll of paper, and they rolled that out on the floor, and they got straight edges, and they're laying the roll centers out on paper, and drawing it in real dimensions, and then they're laying out spindles, and they're mocking up stuff with simulating kingpin inclinations and or the caster, and I'm just like, all this stuff is just, blowing my mind. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And I couldn't suck it up enough. I couldn't get it fast enough, and I just loved being part of that. And it was crazy to watch those guys do that. I mean, there was no books, there was no internet, there was nothing. These guys are drawing it, and then they're making like holding bars, and like one guy'd push and one guy'd hold because they're trying to feel what the difference would be if they move pivot points, and it was crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So it was neat, plotting their own camber curves, because they wanted to make sure all the A-frames are the right length, and it was crazy stuff.
Yeah, just on the floor of a floor of a shop.
Yeah, I mean, Jimbo I love that guy, and he always amazed me because he had a guy drink all night, and we always, Roger Scanlon always, we always had the joke, if we'd look at a race car and we're trying to figure out what to do, and Roger'd go, we got to do the Jimmy box, get to stand like this, we'd look at our notes, it's got to come to us if we do the Jimmy Bach, you got to have a cigarette and a beer can, that was our joke, if we stare at it doing this long enough, it's got to come to us, and I just remember one night I'm out there and I'm working and Jimbo's drinking, and they were laying out the caster stuff, and they're talking about caster split. I didn't know what caster split even was, what are you guys talking about, and so there's a difference caster right to left, and we all had manual steering then. Jimbo goes, we got to figure something out. I drink some more beer, and the next morning I go out there, and Jimbo, somewhere in the middle of the night, came out and he wrote this 3-page letter. I mean, it's solid words in him. He goes, you guys got to read this. And he gives it to my dad, and my dad's reading. He goes, yeah, we got to do that. And he goes, Les reads it, and Gary, and I'm the last one. I read it, and I'm like, he's talking about got to make power steering. If we had power steering, we could put more caster in these things, and it would de-wedge the car. We got to lay this out, how far we're turning the wheel and how much caster, how much that would de-wedge and what. So they manually laid that out. If they could find a way to get power steering, that they could get this car de-wedged in the middle of the corner. And so my dad had a friend, Gary McAllister, he had a machine shop, and so they decided to take a Chevy steering box apart and see how the power steering box worked. So they took it all apart, seen the servo valve, and because they're like, that's too soft, we got to have something we can feel. So they figured out how that whole thing worked, and we just got to make this torsion rod in there bigger, and then that'll give us more feel. After they understood how it worked, so they found back then a trunks had a spring rod, had a rod that ran across, came out, had a lever, and that's what opened your trunk. Well, that was a 1/2-inch diameter. It's spring steel. Oh, perfect. Cut that up. They took it over to Gary's. They ground this new torsion bar, made a fixture because you got to have that servo just lined up. Otherwise, it just turn right or left, And the next thing you know, then they got power steering, and now they're making different spindles and mounts and
at that point, that you guys knew of, did anyone else have power steering?
No, it wasn't even. It was unheard of. Yeah, absolutely, first ones They were the first ones to have it. Absolutely.
Right out of Vesper, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, Randy Sweet, he gets wind of, some of this stuff because those guys were all racing against each other, and then he took it to the new level to make a rack and pinion steering, but he still had used that same servo, and then he would offer it in different feels, so that was a different size torsion bar in there. So yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I did not know that whatsoever.
Yeah. They had, they had the box, and then they still wanted to have a rack and pinion style, steering. So they had what they called the slide bar. So that steering box had a tie rod that connected to the edge of this flat bar, and then that slid back and forth in 2 mounts, and then that had your tie rods on it. So then it was always, because otherwise a steering box has that swing arm, so it's not very, the toe in or your Ackerman and all that, you can't adjust it. So that's the way they could adjust it. And yeah, it's crazy. That's what they came up with.